Hello, this is Professor Sanchez. I'm looking to pause for a moment before we get into some of the bigger assignments. Now that we've gotten to know each other a little bit better, I want to lay some of the groundwork for how you should be reading some of the information I'll be giving you. It also serves as a short lesson on critical thinking, I suppose. In this video, I'll be working in Canvas with an example to show you ways to do what some might call critical thinking in reading. Specifically critical reading, if you've never heard that term before. But as you can see here, I've posted some pages for Unit 2. You can, over on the side, I'm over in the Pages section, and I pulled this up just to use as an example so that I can walk you through some of this information to see kind of how you should be contextualizing it. In this case, it's Act 2.1, Acting Out Culture Introduction. At the top, it has key terms. There's a little bit of an introduction here, and I'll read it off. There are some key terms to keep in mind that the text introduces. We will go over some of these definitions, but one thing to look for is the way that each of these is defined in the text. Pretty basic. Sets things up, and then it just drops these key terms in here with some bullet points. Norm is a widely held cultural idea. Social script is a set of behavioral instructions. The pages, of course, are not set up in isolation. They're all linked with some eye toward bigger topics that we will be covering. Now, even though I'm only giving you definitions here and giving you a little bit of context, I'm assuming that you're also reading the text and using these definitions and these little introductions and connections to make larger connections with the text, and then to hold on to those so that later on you can use them a little bit better. Like I said, everything is linked with the eye on some of the bigger topics you may not even have thought about yet. But these pages have some pretty good information, but they'll only be useful if you know how to take this information in. Although some of the context for these slides is embedded as you lead up to them, I'll go ahead and go over just one here. For example, rhetorical situation. Okay, it's in one of the bullet points here, right before roles, cultural beliefs, identity, narrative. All of those are bullet pointed as well. As you can see, there aren't definitions there because each one of those is defined pretty explicitly in the text, which I'm assuming that, again, that you have read at this point. And you might initially your instinct may be just to see those, make note of them, and write them down, or just remember them so that you can look up the definition. Maybe there's a quiz later. You identify it in the quiz, and then you kind of just forget about it, right? It's sort of human nature. What I'm asking you to do now, before we get into all of this, is to think about how you can use these later on. So you want to hold on to these either in physical notes or as you encounter them in the future. Because they're going to have some more context as we go. And I'm assuming that you will use these definitions to get some depth into your examples, or maybe in ways that you can reference the text, a variety of different ways. So at the bottom here, there's a little outro that has that has some commentary. Most of this commentary is sort of my words for the most part. They may quote some parts of the text. For example, I use the term rhetorical situation and how it is used in a particular way. That particular way is basically how the text defines rhetorical situation. So when I put little quotes around there, I'm probably guiding you towards something. So later on in this little sentence afterwards, it says, if I boil it down here, it might be any situation, whether it be in a formal academic paper or walking into a new classroom that can be read and examined for its meaning. Now, that may or may not mean anything to you at this point, depending on whether you've actually read the introduction yet. But for now, I'm just going to say that is sort of my way of being the teacher, trying to translate it in some ways for you. If that's too confusing for you, then, I apologize, but it does at least give you an idea of how I'm going to use the material in the text, and then, reference it. Okay? So as we go here, with these in mind, you should be looking at ways the information applies to the reading you did, and I'll just go ahead. I have a couple of notes here that I want to make sure that I get to, and anticipate how they might be used with some of the readings or assignments in the future. In other words, don't just look at them, memorize them, swallow them up, fill your head up, and then regurgitate them out. Sorry for the graphic nature of that image, but I think you kind of understand through that image that I'm looking for more than that. I'm looking for more than just that you can memorize a term and then spit it back out to me and then repeat kind of what I said, right? I want critical reading and even critical thinking and critical writing involves ways you can use this information, okay? So remember that it's not only how well you can define a key term, or maybe in the case of Blood Meridian later, identify a scene or a character, although, sometimes that's part of it, but also a way to approach your thinking about an idea and be able to tackle it in various ways. I hope this video helps set up some of the expectations and maybe demystify the process a little bit. Look forward to seeing you and working with you at least. All right, well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.